Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome back to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. We are here in Breezeholm in Whiterun, and we're about to do the thing that I wanted to do in the last installment, which is not the Battle of Whiterun, but read some damn books. So, I'm gonna come in here, close the door so no one fucking bothers me. I'm gonna sit in this chair. Hey, Miko, close that damn door. Damn it. Alright, fine, but you better chill. So, let's have a look at some of these books, shall we? Let's see. Words of Clan Mother Ahnissi to her favored daughter. Did I read this already? I don't think so. Ahnissi tells you, you are no longer a mewing kitten, and you have learned to keep secrets from Ahnissi, and so Ahnissi tells you. In the beginning there were two littermates, Abner and Fadomai. After many phases, Fadomai said to Anur, "Let us wed and make children to share our happiness." And they gave birth to Alkosh, the first cat. And Anur said, "Alkosh, we give you time, for what is as fast or as slow as a cat?" And they gave birth to Canarthi, the winds. Canarthi, to you we give the sky, for what can fly higher than the wind? And they gave birth to Magris, the cat's eye. Magris, to you we give the sun, for what is brighter than the eye of a cat? And they gave birth to Mara, the mother cat. Mara, you are love, for what is more loving than a mother? And they gave birth to Srendar, the runt. Srendar, we give you mercy, for how does a runt survive except by mercy? And many phases passed, and Abner and Fadomai were happy. It's Honor, not Abner. And Honor said, "We should have more children to share our happiness." And Fadomai agreed. And she gave birth to Hermora, and she gave birth to Hirsine, and she gave birth to Maruns, and Mafala, and Sangin, and Shigorath, and many others. And Fadomai said, "Hermora, you are the tides, for who can say whether the moons predict the tides, or the tides predict the moons? Hirsine, you are the hungry cat, for what hunts better than a cat with an empty belly? Maruns, you are the Jakajit, for what is more destructive than an kitten? Mafala, you are the clan mother, for what is more secretive than the ways of the clan mothers? Sangin, you are the blood cat, for who can control the urges of blood? Shigorath, you are the skooma cat, for what is crazier than a cat on skooma?" And Honor said, "2 litters is enough, for too many children will steal our happiness." But Canarthi went to Fadomai and said, "Fadomai, mother, Canarthi grows lonely so high above the world where not even my brother Alkosh can fly." Fadomai took pity on her, and tricked Honor to make her pregnant again. And Fadomai gave birth to the moons and their motions, and she gave birth to Nirni, the majestic sands and lush forests. And she gave birth to Azura, the dusk and the dawn. And from the beginning, Nirni and Azura fought for their mother's favor. Honor caught Fadomai while she was still birthing, and he was angry. Honor struck Fadomai, and she fled to birth the last of her litter far away in the great darkness. Fadomai's children heard what had happened, and they all came to be with her and protect her from Honor's anger. And Fadomai gave birth to Lorkaj, the last of her litter, in the great darkness. And the heart of Lorkaj was filled with the great darkness. And when he was born, the great darkness knew its name, and it was Namira. And Fadomai knew her time was near. Fadomai said, Jakajay, to you Fadomai gives the lattice, for what is steadier than the phases of the moons? Your eternal motions will protect us from Honor's anger. And the moons left to take their place in the heavens. And Honor growled and shook the great darkness, but he could not cross the lattice. And Fadomai said, Nirni, to you Fadomai leaves her greatest gift. You will give birth to many people as Fadomai gave birth today. When Nirni saw that Azura had nothing, Nirni left smiling. And all Fadomai's children left except Azura, and Fadomai said, To you, my favored daughter, Fadomai leaves her greatest gift. To you Fadomai leaves her secrets, and Fadomai told her favored daughter 3 things. And Fadomai said, When Nirni is filled with her children, take one of them and change them. Make the fastest, cleverest, most beautiful people, and call them Khajiit. And Fadomai said, The Khajiit must be the best climbers, for if Masser and Secunda fail, they must climb Canarthi's breath to set the moons back in their courses. And Fadomai said, the Khajiit must be the best deceivers, for they must always hide their nature from the children of Anur. And Fadomai said, the Khajiit must be the best the best survivors, for Nirni will be jealous, and she will make the sands harsh and the forests unforgiving, and the Khajiit will always be hungry and at war with Nirni. And with these words Fadomai died. After many phases, Nirni came to Lorkaj and said, Lorkaj, Fadomai told me to give birth to many children, but there is no place for them. And Lorkaj said, Lorkaj makes a place for children, and Lorkaj puts you there so you can give birth. But the heart of Lorkaj was filled with the great darkness, and Lorkaj tricked his siblings so that they were forced into this new place with Nirni. And many of Fadomai's children escaped and became the stars, and many of Fadomai's children died to make Nirni's path stable. And the survivors stayed and punished Lorkaj. The children of Fadomai tore out the heart of Lorkaj and hid it deep within Nirni. And they said, we curse you, noisy Lorkaj, to walk Nirni for many phases. But Nirni soon forgave Lorkaj, for Nirni could make children. And she filled herself with children, but cried, because her favorite children, the forest people, did not know their shape. And Azura came to her and said, poor Nirni, stop your tears. Azura makes for you a gift of new people. Nirni stopped weeping, and Azura spoke the first secret to the moons, and they parted and let Azura pass. And Azura took some forest people who were torn between man and beast, and she placed them in the best deserts and forests on Nirni. And Azura in her wisdom made them of many shapes, one for every purpose. And Azura named them Khajiit, and told them her second secret, and taught them the value of secrets. And Azura bound the new Khajiit to the lunar lattice, as is proper for Nirni's secret defenders. Then Azuri spoke the third secret, and the moons shone down on the marshes, and their light became sugar. But Ifer heard the first secret, and stuck in behind Azura. And Ifer could not appreciate secrets, and he told Nirni of Azura's trick. So Nirni made the deserts hot and the sands biting, and Nirni made the forests wet and filled with poisons. And Nirni thanked Ifer and let him change the forest people also. And Ifer did not have Azura's subtle wisdom. So Ifer made the forest people elves always, and never beasts. And Ifer named them Bosmer. And from that moment they were no longer in the same litter as the Khajiit. And because Ifer had no appreciation for secrets, he shouted the first secret across all the heavens with his last breath, so that all of Fadomai's children could cross the lattice. But Azura, in her wisdom, closed the ears of angry Anur and noisy Lorkaj, so they alone did not hear the word. Damn, she fucked over her kids. That sucks. Okay, let's put... words of Clan Mother Ahnissi. Alright. The Talos Mistake by Leonora Venatus, Imperial Liaison to the Aldmeri Dominion. As citizens of the Empire, all are of course familiar with the deeds of Emperor Tiber Septim, but it is the Emperor's ascent to godhood as Talos that is the subject of this work. Until Tiber Septim's death, there had been but 8 divines: Akatosh, Dibella, Arche, Zenithar, Stendar, Mara, Kinnereth, and Julianos. These gods were, and are, worshipped throughout the Empire, and while some may have different names in the varying provinces, for example, Akatosh is known as Oriel to the Aldmer, and Arche is sometimes known as Arche, all are recognized and revered by all races and cultures of Tamriel. But when Tiber Septim passed to Aetherius, there came to be a 9th divine, Talos, also called Izmir, the Dragon of the North. The man who was so loved in life became worshipped in death. Indeed, it can be argued that Talos, the 9th divine, became even more important than the 8 that had preceded him, at least to humans, for he was a god who was once just a man, and through great deeds actually managed to ascend to godhood. And if one human could achieve such a feat, couldn't it be done again? Couldn't all humans aspire to achieve divinity? So we thought, we humans, and so we continued to worship Talos, and revere him as the ultimate hero god. But that was then. This is now. And now we know the truth. We were wrong. As citizens of the Empire, we all experienced the horrors of the Great War, and it was not until the signing of the White Gold Concordat, the treaty between the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion, that we once again knew peace. One of the most important stipulations of that treaty, as every imperial citizen is well aware, is that Talos could no longer be worshipped as a god. This edict shook the very foundations of the empire. There were those who rebelled against the law. Indeed, some still do. But the citizens of the empire must know this. The emperor did not agree to outlaw the worship of Talos because it was demanded by the Thalmor, the ruling body of the Aldmeri Dominion. The emperor agreed to the outlaw of the worship of Talos because it was the right thing to do. Today, the emperor, and indeed the empire itself, recognizes that allowing the worship of Talos was a mistake, for by doing so, by allowing the worship of Talos as a divine, the empire actually did its people a great disservice, for this only succeeded in weakening the memory of the man Tiber Septim and his many extraordinary, though mortal, deeds, and pushing people away from the 8 divines, the true gods, who do deserve our love and reverence. And so, the empire admits it was wrong. The Talos mistake will not be repeated. May we find centuries of peace and prosperity with our new Thalmor friends, and continue to share a spirituality that binds together all the cultures and races of Tamriel. Ah, what a wonderful piece of Imperial and Thalmor propaganda. Which I'm sure was penned for no other reason than honesty and sincerity. Let's do the Legendary Sancre Tor. The Legendary City of Sancre Tor by Matera Chapel. During the Skyrim conquests, First Era 240 to 415, ambitious Highland earls, envious of the conquests and wealth of their northern cousins in High Rock and Morrowind, looked south over the ramparts of the Gerald Mountains for their opportunities. The Gerald Mountains proved to be too great a barrier, and northern Cyrodiil too poor a prize, to reward full-scale Nord invasions. However, Alessia hired many ambitious Nord and Breton warbands as mercenaries, with the promises of rich lands and trade concessions. Once settled among the victorious Alessian Cyrodiils, the Nord and Breton warriors and battle mages were quickly assimilated into the comfortable and prosperous Nibenian culture. Alessia received the divine inspiration for her slave rebellion at Sancre Tor, and here she founded her holy city. Sancre Tor's mines provided some wealth, but the poor soils and harsh climate of the remote mountain site meant it must be supplied with food and goods from the heartlands. Further, located on one of the few passes through the Jarls, its fortunes were subject to the instability of relations with Skyrim. When relations were good with Skyrim, it prospered through trade and alliance. When relations were bad with Skyrim, it was vulnerable to siege and occupation by the Nords. With the decline of the Alessian Order, circa First Era 2321, the seat of religious rule of Cyrodiil moved south to the Imperial City, but Sancre Tor remained a mountain fortress and major religious center until the rise of the Septim dynasty. In Second Era 852, the city was suffering under one of the periodic occupations by Skyrim and High Rock invaders. King Kulakain sent his new general, Talos, to recapture the city and expel the northern invaders. During his siege, Sancre Tor was destroyed and abandoned. Realizing the strategic weakness of the site, General Talos, later Tiber Septim, resolved to abandon Sancre Tor, and during his reign, no effort was made to rebuild the city or citadel. Alessian historians asserted that Sancre Tor was magically concealed and defended by the gods. Records of Sancre Tor's repeated defeats and occupations by northern invaders gives the lie to this assertion. The entrance to the citadel was indeed concealed by sorcery, and the citadel and its labyrinthine subterranean complex were defended by magical traps and illusions. But their secrets were betrayed to besieging Nords by the Breton enchanters who crafted them. One enduring feature of the legend of Sancre Tor is the ancient tombs of the Riemann emperors. Following the defeat of the Akaviri invaders, Sancre Tor enjoyed a brief resurgence of wealth and culture under Riemann Cyrodiil and his descendants, Riemann II and Riemann III. Tracing his ancestry to Saint Alessia, and following the tradition that Saint Alessia was buried in the catacombs beneath Sancre Tor, Riemann built splendid funerary precincts in the depths of the ancient citadel underpassages. Here the last Riemann emperor, Riemann III, was buried in his tomb with the Amulet of Kings. During the sack of Sancre Tor, General Talos is said to have recovered the Amulet of Kings from the tomb of Riemann III. Theologians ascribe the long centuries of political and economic turmoil following the collapse of the Riemann dynasty to the loss of the Amulet of Kings, and associate the renaissance of the Cyrodiilic Empire in the Third Era with Tiber Septim's recovery of the amulet from Riemann III's tomb. Sancre Tor has lain in ruins since the beginning of the Third Age, and the surrounding region is virtually uninhabited. Now all communications with the north are through the passes at Coral and Bruma, and Sancre Tor's citadel and underpassages have become the refuge of various savage goblin tribes. This is a competing tradition that Saint Alessia is buried on the site of the Temple of the One in the Imperial City. The actual resting place of Saint Alessia is unknown. Once again, I will say that if they ever do create a TV show based on the Elder Scrolls universe, I would love it to be about the Alessian Slave Rebellion. That would be super entertaining and very eye-opening as well. Okay, one second. Alright, next up we will do the Firmament by Folk in the House. Alright. The stars of Tamriel are divided into 13 constellations. 3 of them are the major constellations, known as the Guardians. These are the Warrior, the Mage, and the Thief. Each of the Guardians protects its 3 charges from the 13th constellation, the Serpent. When the sun rises near one of the constellations, it is that constellation's season. Each constellation has a season of approximately 1 month. The Serpent has no season, for it moves about in the heavens, usually threatening one of the other constellations. The Warrior. The Warrior is the first Guardian constellation, and he protects his charges during their seasons. The Warrior's own season is Last Seed, when his strength is needed for the harvest. His charges are the Lady, the Steed, and the Lord. Those born under the sign of the Warrior are skilled with weapons of all kinds, but prone to short tempers. The Mage. The Mage is a Guardian constellation whose season is Rain's Hand, when magicka was first used by men. His charges are the Apprentice, the Golem, and the Ritual. Those born under the Mage have more magicka and talent for all kinds of spellcasting, but are often arrogant and absent-minded. The Thief. The Thief is the last Guardian constellation, and her season is the darkest month of Evening Star. Her charges are the Lover, the Shadow, and the Tower. Those born under the sign of the Thief are not typically thieves, though they take risks more often and only rarely come to harm. They will run out of luck eventually, however, and rarely live as long as those born under other signs. The Serpent. The Serpent wanders around in the sky and has no season, though its motions are predictable to a degree. No characteristics are common to all who are born under the sign of the Serpent. Those born under this sign are the most blessed and the most cursed. The Lady. The Lady is one of the Warrior's charges, and her season is Heartfire. Those born under the sign of the Lady are kind and tolerant. The Steed. The Steed is one of the Warrior's charges, and her season is Mid-Year. Those born under the sign of the Steed are impatient and always hurrying from one place to another. That sounds like me. The Lord. The Lord's season is First Seed, and he oversees all of Tamriel during the planting. Those born under the sign of the Lord are stronger and healthier than those born under other signs. The Apprentice. The Apprentice's season is Sun's Height. Those born under the sign of the Apprentice have a special affinity for magic of all kinds, but are more vulnerable to magic as well. The Atronach. The Atronach, often called the Golem, is one of the Mage's charges. Its season is Sun's Dusk. Those born under this sign are natural sorcerers with deep reserves of magicka, but they cannot generate magicka of their own. The Ritual. The Ritual is one of the Mage's charges, and its season is Morning Star. Those born under this sign have a variety of abilities, depending on the aspects of the moon and the moons and the divines. The Lover. The Lover is one of the Thief's charges, and her season is Sun's Dawn. Those born under the sign of the Lover are graceful and passionate. The Shadow. The Shadow season is Second Seed. The Shadow grants those born under her sign the ability to hide in shadows. The Tower. The Tower is one of the Thief's charges, and its season is Frostfall. Those born under the sign of the tower have a knack for finding gold and can open locks of all kinds. Alright. Oops. Alright, that's going to do it for this installment of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.